Okay, good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us today for our first Growing Groceries class of this season, this, spring and summer season. Let me go ahead and let a few more people in here. And today we're going to be talking about bananas, how to grow a bounty of bananas in your own backyard. And for people who are signed up for this and paid and are going to get the banana plants, I have more information about that at the end. So there we go. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about bananas in general, banana physiology, some kind of unique parts of bananas, what kind of soil you want for growing bananas in the best, water, fertilizer, and a little information on pests and disease. So bananas are kind of a funny plant. They're kind of between an annual crop and a perennial crop. When we talk about annuals, that's something that grows either in 1 year or in one season here in Florida. It goes all the way from it sprouts, it grows, it flowers, it sets seeds, it reproduces and dies all in 1 year or less. A perennial crop is something that grows for many years. So think apples growing up north. An apple tree sprouts and it grows. It has to reach a point of sexual maturity before it can flower and start creating apples. And then it's going to do that year after year for a number of years until it dies from old age or some other kind of problem. So bananas and also papayas are something that grow for more than 1 year, but they don't grow for many years. So they're kind of a funny in-between crop, so you need to understand that. So one banana plant will not grow and give you bananas over and over again forever, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Bananas are a true tropical fruit crop, so most of the information I'm going to give here today is kind of geared for Hernando County. Keep in mind, if you live south of Hernando County, you get less cold weather during the winter, so bananas are going to be a bit easier to grow for you. For people who live down in Miami and Homestead, they grow year-round. They do have a small commercial banana production down there in South Florida. They grow mostly specialty bananas on a small scale, but they do really well there. If you live north of Hernando County, even just in Citrus County, it does get a bit colder, longer up there. You're going to have to kind of adjust for your weather. Bananas are related to bird of paradise, heliconias, gingers, and plantains. Plantains are a type of banana that really never gets sweet. They're very, very starchy, but it's a very, very important food crop around the world. Bananas were originally native to Southeast Asia, and of course, since then, we've moved them way around the world, all in the tropical zone. If you take a globe of the world, go around the tropics, bananas are grown all around there now. They are a very important food source in South and Central America and the Caribbean and Africa also, but they're not native to there. They came originally from Southeast Asia. So here's a quote that I took from the University of Florida fact sheet. Florida is considered a climatically marginal area for commercial banana production due to our subtropical climate and occasional freezes. So almost all of Florida is technically subtropical, and bananas are pure tropical. Now, the exception is the southern tip of Florida, where there is a small area there where it's the very edge of pure tropical. Bananas grow great there, but you can still grow them here. You're just going to have to keep a few things in mind and take precautions against our cold weather. So a little banana physiology. Bananas grow on one or more pseudostems and an underground rhizome. So the pseudostem is the stalk of the banana plant. It's not a true stem because it's not a true tree. And then underground, it has a rhizome. So that is what your one plant or the one main stem is going to grow from and send out leaves from. but the rhizome underground is going to send up suckers eventually. So bananas reproduce by suckers. They don't, even though they do flower and give you bananas, ideally, eventually, bananas don't have seeds. So bananas, you can't take banana seeds and plant the seeds and get a plant that way. They reproduce by suckers. So one pseudostem may have as many as 40 leaves in its lifetime. What happens is the banana plant grows, makes a leaf, another leaf, another leaf, each different variety of banana, and this also depends on how it's being grown and how quickly it's growing, gets to a point where it makes a certain number of leaves, and then all of a sudden the banana plant knows, okay, boom, I've made enough leaves. The next thing I'm going to do is reproduce by sending up a flower stalk and making bananas. So that's the whole process that we're shooting for. Plants, one plant will grow in a mat, basically. And what that is, it's the pseudostem, the one main plant, and the suckers and the rhizome that grow underground. So keep in mind, over time, if you start with one banana plant and it grows, once it gets larger and older, the rhizome underground will send up a couple of suckers. Each one of those suckers could be chopped off, planted, and now each one of them is going to do the same thing over time. So starting with just one banana plant, over time, you can create an entire patch of bananas that are all at different ages, basically. One may be fully formed, made enough leaves, it has bananas on it. Others are younger, and some of them are just, brand new sprouts. So it's a great way to create a patch, a long-lasting patch over time. So when a banana plant gets to the point where it wants to flower and make fruit, what that is called, the whole structure is called an inflorescence. And the inflorescence ideally appears after 10 to 15 months. Now that's under ideal growing conditions. Here in Central Florida, when it gets cold during the winter, it kind of puts a halt on that and will stretch out the time required to create an inflorescence and the banana fruit. So we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about that. But ideally, an inflorescence can appear after 10 to 15 months after producing somewhere between 26 and 32 leaves. And if you're really curious and diligent, you can keep track of how many leaves your plant produces and start to get an idea of, okay, we're getting close. It should be sending up a stalk and making bananas soon, and that will give you kind of a better idea of when your plant's going to actually produce. Technically, botanically, a banana fruit is technically a berry and is produced without pollination. So it produces the bananas and they don't have to be pollinated. It's the exact same thing with seedless cucumbers. Seedless cucumber plants will grow, flower, produce cucumbers, although they do not need any pollen to do so. We won't get too deep into the genetic reasons behind that, but there is a reason for that, where some plants can produce perfectly good fruit without pollination, but other ones require pollination to produce that fruit. So what happens is your banana plant is going to grow, makes a pseudostem, it's going to flower, it's going to fruit, and it's only going to do that once. After it's all done and you harvest bananas off of it, it will not make you any more bananas. So generally what you need to do is go ahead and chop it down. A machete works really well for that. Chop it up and just toss it back on the ground to use it for mulch. That's what most people do. It's going to break down and it's going to add to the soil and add the nutrients back to the soil for the other bananas that are ideally sprouting up and growing. So future production is going to come from the suckers that grow from the rhizome from your initial banana plants. So how to go about growing happy banana plants? What do they really, really like the best? Shoot growth is best between 78 and 82 degrees. So obviously, summer here in Central Florida and really most of Florida is absolutely perfect for bananas. It's, we have no problems hitting between 78 and 82 for many, many months from spring all the way through fall. The problem is going to be winter. So what happens with bananas and other tropical crops is it doesn't have to get all the way down to close to 32 to affect the plant. With all tropical fruits, this goes for mangoes, papayas, and a number of other things also. When it gets colder and it gets below about 60 degrees, it's going to stop plant growth. So other crops up north go through actual dormancy. So if you think about an apple tree or a peach tree or plum trees, what happens during the winter is they go through a whole set of physiological responses to shorter daylight hours and colder weather, and the leaves fall off, the trees go dormant, they don't grow, they move all their nutrients into the roots, and it goes through this whole process all winter long. It sits there completely dormant, and then longer daylight, more daylight, per day, and warmer temperatures trigger it eventually to start to grow, move the nutrients back up, make flowers, make new leaves for the new year, make fruit, and that's its life cycle. Tropical plants do not do that because in the tropics, the days aren't particularly longer or shorter. It's close to the equator. Temperatures are pretty much the same year round. They don't have to go dormant. But what they do, and I guess vocabulary word for today, is go through quiescence. And that's where the plant just quits growing, doesn't die back, doesn't naturally lose its leaves. It just sits there and does nothing until the conditions improve. The weather gets warmer, the daylight gets longer, the water and fertilizer, everything is correct. And when everything gets back into the ideal range, boom, it will magically start to grow again. So plant growth is going to slow between 60 and pretty much stops at 50 degrees. So during the periods from fall through spring, when it gets cool and chilly and we all enjoy it, your bananas are not going to be happy. They're not going to grow. They're going to sit there. They're going to be fine. But you don't have to water them nearly as much or fertilize them if they're not actively growing. Now, as the temperature here gets colder, chilling damage and freeze damage can occur at or below 32 degrees. Some banana varieties have slightly better cold tolerance. Other ones have worse cold tolerance. So it varies a little bit, but don't think that if you go out and purchase other varieties of bananas and it says that it's very cold tolerant, it's not going to take temperatures down into the 20s or really cold weather. It's only a couple degrees more of cold tolerance. So the varieties that you're going to get as part of signing up for this class are kind of average cold tolerance. But when we start to get really, really close to 32 degrees, all bets are off. If your plants are out there in the middle of your yard, uncovered and unprotected, they will suffer damage. They can also be damaged by continuous winds. So if anybody watching today is, they live right on the coast, I don't think we have enough continuous winds here in Central Florida to be really an issue for this. But in other parts of the world where it's very windy a lot, bananas can get damaged. The leaves will get torn and shredded, and they don't produce very well. Now, bananas can grow very well, and I've seen them growing before in the shade. But the shadier it is, the more it's going to delay the harvest. So even though they'll look good and they'll grow, they're going to grow slower, and it's going to take even longer to get bananas off of them. So full sun is best. A little bit of shade is fine. That's not going to hurt things too much. But heavy shade, like underneath an oak tree or on the north side of your house where it's very shady almost all year long, except in the height of summer, it's not going to be very good for harvesting. They'll look good, they'll grow okay, but they're going to grow slower. And bananas are really not tolerant to salts or saline soil. So if you live right on the coast, salt spray. If you live like right on the beach where during a storm, it's going to blow salt spray all over your house and all over your plants, your landscape. Bananas are not a really good choice because they're really not very salt tolerant. So for the soil, the ideal pH is 5.5 to 7.0. which is a little bit acidic. They're pretty forgiving with a range of soils. And if you work in a lot of organic matter or compost, that's going to help compensate for slightly higher pH. For people who live in Hernando County, we generally see pHs of 7 on up. Now, let me make a little word of warning here for anybody who lives in a house that's fairly new construction. If when they were building the house, they brought in a lot of fill dirt to fill in the yard before they put down your sod and put in the landscape plants and everything else, fill dirt has really, really unusual components to it. I've seen soil test results come back where somebody has a new home, maybe a year old, and they had really unusual fill dirt put in, and their pH can be very, very high. They can have absolutely no phosphorus in it. We get back really unusual readings. So if you live in a newer home that was built with fill dirt filling in your yard, you're probably going to want to dig out an area where you're going to grow your bananas and replace that soil with something a little bit better, or even better, get a soil test done first. If you're ever interested in getting details on a soil test, contact our office, shoot me an email, we'll send you the information. For $10, you can send off a sample to the University of Florida in Gainesville, and they'll tell you your pH, so you know up front what it is. That's very important for growing bananas, Bahia lawns, azaleas, a lot of other crops. It's good to know your pH in advance. That way you save a lot of money and a lot of frustration. And tells you your levels of phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and a couple of other elements. So for your soil, bananas really, it's really critical that you grow them in very well-drained, deep soils that are high in organic matter. So I live in Spring Hill, and if any of you live in Spring Hill, you know that you have pretty much pure sand here. Sand is good because it's very well drained, but sand, the kind of sands we have here, are over drained. So it's going to be really hard to keep the soil moist and the plants happy during the dry times of year. During summer, when we get a lot of rain, bananas are very, very happy. I have some bananas in my yard, and they were very, very happy last year during the summer when we're getting lots of rain. The problem I had was keeping them moist when it wasn't raining, and I ended up having to dig them up and move them to a corner of my vegetable garden, because my vegetable garden gets watered on a very regular basis, and now the bananas, because they're at the edge of it, get watered just as often as I water the vegetable garden. It was more difficult for me to water the bananas where I have them growing. So keep this in mind. One way to really help the water holding capacity of sanding soil is work in a lot of organic matter. So if you make compost, that's great. You could buy it by the bag, you could buy it by the truckload, but you can add compost at a 50-50 ratio to sandy soils, mix it in really well, and that compost is going to help hold the moisture better, and it's going to make it available for your bananas for longer. They're not going to dry out nearly as quickly. So watering. Bananas really like frequent water. They get really unhappy when they get too dry. So dry conditions can be very damaging, but on the other hand, they do not like really, really wet conditions. So if you have, for some reason, maybe you live in Brooksville. I know we have areas around the city of Brooksville where you don't have very good drainage. During the summer, your soil stays really wet. If you have standing water during the summer, you don't want to put bananas there, because if they're sitting in standing water, they will die within 1 to 3 days. So they like it moist, not too dry, not too wet, but steady moist. So like I said, very sandy soils, the problem with them is they drain a little bit too well. So working in generous amounts of compost is really going to help with that. Bananas need 4 to 6 inches of water per month. So for most plants, when we're giving people advice on how to grow them in their yard, we really don't stress water the heck out of them and fertilize the heck out of them. That's not really good for your lawn. That's not really good for a lot of landscape plants. But bananas, and also papayas for that matter, are a little bit different. You need to pour on the good love and the good attention, give them plenty of water, plenty of fertilizer, get them growing aggressively, and that's going to make them happy, and that's going to ideally give you bananas in a reasonable amount of time. Organic mulching your bananas really helps to help hold in that soil moisture and keep them moist for a little bit longer. So go ahead and do that also. So fertilizer. Bananas grow best in a fertile, moist soil. And the first 4 months growth, so after you get these plants and you plant them in your yard, the first couple months, you need to take extra good care of them because that helps to determine how well they grow long term over the next year, year and a half that they have to grow before they give you actual bananas. So here's some very, very good information from University of Florida. Young plants should be started with about a half a pound of a 6-2-12 or similar formula. You're looking for something in a 3-1-6 ratio. The first number is the percentage of nitrogen, second number is percentage of phosphorus, and the third number is the percentage of potassium. Lawn fertilizer is the opposite of this. Lawn fertilizer is very high in nitrogen because that's what your turf grass wants and needs. Bananas are kind of the opposite. They need to be higher in potassium and lighter in nitrogen. So I started thinking about this when I was putting together this presentation. I was thinking, is that the formulation for like citrus and other fruit tree fertilizer? And the answer to that is no, it's not. Citrus fertilizer is very important and very good for citrus trees and avocados and a few other things, but it doesn't have the right ratio. So I just Googled this. I looked for 6-2-12 fertilizer online and came up with the picture's a little blurry here, but this is actual banana fertilizer, and it is the perfect ratio. So it's a 15-5-30, but that is a 3-1-6 ratio. This should be perfect for bananas. And if you're interested in purchasing this, I found this on Amazon. I do not work for this company. We're not receiving anything from them, but I just thought it was interesting that there are specific banana fertilizers on the market. Make sure you get one with the right ratio, and it should work perfect for bananas. They also have a good need for magnesium. So if this fertilizer doesn't have magnesium, and I didn't try pulling, zooming in on it and reading the label, you can add extra magnesium with Epsom salt. So just maybe a tablespoon of Epsom salt in a gallon of water. Make sure you're using pure Epsom salts, and it's not something for like the bathtub that has scents in it or other additives. Make sure it's pure. Epsom salts are magnesium sulfide. So if you find that, you can find that at a lawn and garden center also. That's a very easy way to add magnesium to any plant that's growing in your yard. And you're going to gradually increase the amount of fertilizer you give the plants as they get bigger and older. And you're going to do that about every 2 months. So that's pretty frequent fertilizing for any plant to fertilize them that often. But like I said, this is very important for bananas. You need to pour on the water, pour on the fertilizer, pour on the good attention, and get them up and going. So banana circles, maybe some of you are familiar with that. There's a lot of information for this online, and it's a very popular idea. I've never really studied it or gotten too deeply into it. It's not especially recommended by the University of Florida. They recommend getting a generous amount of compost and working it into your native soil. Creating a circle is just fine, and growing your bananas in a clump or a circle is fine. But a banana circle is where you clear out an area. It could be 1 or 2 yards in diameter or bigger. And then in the center of that, you dig basically a big hole and bury a whole bunch of compost in the hole in the center. And you plant the bananas around the outside of the ring, and the rhizomes and the roots are going to grow into the compost and turn it into an ideal little planting area. Apparently, if you make it large enough, you can tuck in papayas, because papayas have similar conditions and requirements that are going to make them grow and produce very well also. I've seen designs where you can tuck in other crops and grow them all in your one circle or one spot. So like I said, there are probably a ton of YouTube videos out there with information on this and ways that you can follow that to get more information and try it on your own. Like I said, not especially specifically recommended by UF, but probably not going to hurt. Apparently, a lot of people have a lot of success with that. So a little mention of pests and diseases that bananas can get. They don't have, well, they do have a couple different diseases that they can get, and you're going to have to deal with them. They do have a couple of different insect pests that they can get. I'm really not sure how common they are here in Central Florida. They're a much bigger problem down in South Florida where they grow a lot more bananas. So keep in mind, the more bananas that you have growing in your area, the more food source these insect pests have, and the more they're going to reproduce, and the greater the chance that you're going to get them in your yard. So I've never had anybody contact me or send pictures or bring samples of these in affecting bananas, but they can. It's going to be something that you're going to want to keep an eye out for. So there are two different weevils that can be a pest of bananas: the banana weevil and the sugarcane weevil. Obviously, both of them are a much bigger problem down in South Florida, where they grow a lot of sugarcane. The sugarcane weevil is a problem on sugarcane. So if you have that growing in huge fields near you, they're going to move into your bananas too. But we don't grow sugarcane here in Central Florida, or very, very little, just backyard. You're going to need to keep an eye out for them. They are beetles and they are weevils. So it's a beetle that has its mouth part is kind of curved, kind of distinctive. If you ever have suspicious insects on your plants, just get good pictures and shoot me an email and we'll figure out what it is. They do have nematode problems, spiral nematodes, so they can be a problem on the roots and cause damage to the roots and the roots to rot. What would probably happen to your bananas is they're going to grow well for a while, then they get to the point where they're always wilting. And if the roots for some reason die or rot, your banana will fall over because they can get quite tall and quite large. If they don't have a good root system holding them in the ground, they'll fall right over. So scouting for insect pests is very, very important. They do get some fungal leaf spots, especially in the summer. And what this is going to look like is it's going to be either brown or black spots or patches on the leaves. Keep in mind, as a banana grows, the very, very oldest leaf is going to die as it sends out new leaves. So it doesn't hold on to all of its leaves forever. The bottom ones are going to naturally die and fall off, or when they get most of the way dead, you can go ahead and clip them off. But if you start to see black or brown or discolored spots on the newer leaves, you probably have a fungal leaf spot disease. You're probably going to want to spray with a fungicide. You should be able to use copper fungicide. A really good, commonly used one that works very, very well on bananas is something called mancozeb. And this is a very old fungicide that's been used for many, many years. You could find that on Amazon. I've seen it up for sale on there before. You can find it online. Finding it at a lawn and garden store, I'm not sure if I've ever seen it before. So that's probably something that you need to search out online if you want that to order it. But most people are going to have some kind of fungal leaf spot disease, mostly during the summer when it's very warm and very humid, very wet, because that encourages fungal diseases. And you're probably going to have to spray a few times with the fungicide. So kind of reviewing the main points when it comes to growing bananas: be generous with the water and fertilizer. Don't do that with your lawn. You're going to make it grow like crazy and you're going to be out there cutting it every 4 days. You're going to be really unhappy about that. Don't do that with most everything else that grows in your yard. But bananas and papayas are an exception to that. So be generous with the water and fertilizer. Make lots of compost. Having a compost bin or making it yourself is great. It's a great way to recycle your kitchen scraps, grass clippings, fallen tree leaves, pine needles, whatever it is. If you don't want to make it, you can buy it. Patience is your friend. Bananas are going to take a little bit of patience. Like I said, it takes them normally, in an ideal world, over a year to grow here. But during the winter, when your plants go quiescent and stop growing, and then when it gets really cold during those times in, the middle of winter, they're definitely not going to be growing then. All that time is lost growing time that's going to add to the full amount of time that that plant is going to need to produce bananas. So the faster and better you can get it up and growing during the nice times of year, banana nice times a year, the better. The more you're going to make up for the time that you're losing during the winter, if that makes sense. So put some thought and planning into dealing with whatever cold weather you may get where you live. Keep in mind, I'm in Hernando County. South of here, just Hillsborough, Pinellas County, gets quite a bit less cold weather or really cold weather than we get. And if you go just a little bit north of here, Citrus County, Levy, definitely up in the Panhandle, it's a different world up there. You get a lot more cold weather up there. So picking a place to grow your bananas that's tucked up against the house, where your house is going to radiate a little bit of warmth on cold nights, putting them in a spot and thinking, how am I going to cover these? Is it near a fence where I can attach a cover to it? Do I have them kind of in a tight clump? I can build a PVC structure over it. I could put up a little teepee and throw sheets over it. Just think about this in advance, because even though we're going into spring right now, you don't have to worry about it for a while. Eventually, next winter is going to come, and you don't want to be thinking about, oh my gosh, what do I do to keep my bananas covered and warm, when it's the afternoon and you're going to get a freeze that night. It's a little late. So a little thought and planning goes a long way towards helping to keep your plants warm. And definitely experiment with other varieties of bananas as you can. There are a huge number of varieties of bananas out there that are available. Some are easier to grow than others. Some are a little bit more cold tolerant, although even they are not extremely cold tolerant, but it will give you a couple degree edge towards keeping them alive. So look online, go to your lawn and garden center, put in a great big banana patch, put in a number of different varieties, hedge your bets, see which ones do the best and which ones you get the biggest harvest out of. We had a lot of interest in this class today, so we're probably going to do bananas again, and we'll definitely be picking out a different variety next time. But for those of you who signed up for this class and paid for it, you will be getting 3 banana plants, and the variety that they are is Musa Grand Name. And this is just some information from the website that they have on this variety. It's an outstanding banana variety growing from 6 to 8 feet tall, so it's one of the larger ones. It's not a dwarf. Keep that in mind when you're picking exactly where to grow them. They are not 6 to 8 feet tall right now, but they can potentially get that big. They're solid green when they make the bananas, very attractive for its landscaping potential and good wind resistance. So I mentioned the closer you live to the coast or where in your yard you locate the bananas, wind can be a problem, but they tolerate the wind fairly well. Grand Name produces very large heads of delicious fruit. It is a very quick ripening. So when you get bananas on a banana plant, when they look like this, when they're fully sized up, when they're nice big bananas, but still really green, you're going to take that whole stalk and chop it off. Get somebody to hold on to it, because if it's really big and heavy, you don't want to drop it. You're going to chop it off. You're going to take that bunch of bananas into your house, and this is an old trick I learned a long time ago. If you have a paper bag that's big enough to cover it with, that's great, but you're going to hang it upside down in your closet. So move some clothes out of the way, you're going to hang it up, keep it in the dark, keep it where it's fairly dry, decent temperature, not cold, which your closet shouldn't be, and you're going to keep checking it. And bananas are going to start to ripen at one end of that whole bunch, and they start at one end, and then ding, 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 they turn yellow and ripen, 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 right up that bunch until the last banana ripens. So they're not going to all ripen all at once on the same day. They're going to go bit by bit from one end to the other and keep. It's like, oh my gosh, look, this one at the very end turned yellow, and this one turned yellow, and this one's looking pretty yellow. And that's how you're going to actually pick them off to eat them. So hopefully all of you will do well at being successful with this and actually getting that huge bunch. This variety can produce 40 to 60 pounds of fruit off of one plant, ideally. This is the variety that you're going to find at the supermarket. So it's not an apple banana or a dwarf banana or blue Java ice cream, but still it's going to produce good bananas. It says that it grows well from zone 8 to 11. Zone 8 is up into Georgia, and it snows up there. So you'd have to, I don't think that we have anybody who's going to be growing them in Georgia joining us today, but here it should do well here in Central Florida, as well as a banana can do. Although, like I said, when we get down to 32 below that, all bets are off. So if you want to follow all of our upcoming classes, the best way to do that is be sure to go and bookmark www.hernandoextension.com. As we schedule our classes and put them on Facebook, they automatically get fed to this web page, so you don't have to join up or sign up. We're not spamming you or selling your email, to people who check this. I don't even think that we really can do that. Just a freestanding web page where we have a listing of all of our planned out upcoming classes and how you register for them and the links and everything else that you need to know. And if you have any other questions, pictures, problems, I'm going to get out of this in just a second and start answering questions. There is our office's address, our phone number. The best way to get in touch with me is by email. Shoot me an email at wlester@ufl.edu. And like with growing bananas, patience is your friend. Sometimes things get busy and hectic, but I'll figure out what the answer is to your question and send lots of pictures. There's no such thing as sending too many pictures. That really helps us to figure out what your problem is and to get an answer to you and tell you what to do to solve your problems. So with that, let me go ahead and get out of screen share and go back to answering any questions that we may have here. Shelly's from Dade City. So Shelly, it gets cold there. You might be, I don't know, a degree or two warmer than me here in Spring Hill, but you're still going to have to deal with the cold weather there. Looks like a few people have problems with the speakers and the sound. Like I said, this is recording, and I'm going to email the link to the recording out to everybody who signed up for this, so you'll be able to watch it once again. If anybody would like a copy of the PowerPoint slides, go ahead and send me an email, wlester@ufl.edu, and I can go ahead and send you a PDF of the PowerPoint slides. That's no problem. And we have a question here from Steven. What should we do with frost damaged leaves? That's a very good question, because if your bananas suffer a lot of cold damage over the winter, you may lose a couple leaves, you may lose all the leaves. Hopefully your plant is going to grow back from the stem, but worst case scenario, if the entire pseudostem freezes and dies, hopefully the rhizome underground stayed warm enough, it will send up new shoots for the coming year, and you haven't completely lost all your bananas. But the dead, frozen, dried out leaves, go ahead and prune them off. It's safe to do that right now. This is March 15th at the moment. So it's safe to prune them off. The frozen ones turn completely brown. Now, if you go back in time a little bit, and let's say it's right after Christmas, and we had a freeze over Christmas like we did this past year, don't prune the dead leaves off right away. Leave them on until spring, because the dead leaves are going to help insulate the rest of the plant in case we get another frost or freeze. So with most plants, we tell you to leave the brown, dead, frozen stuff on there. It helps to protect the inside of the plant, a pseudostem with bananas or a trunk with any other flowering plants. And it gives them a little bit of a natural blanket if we get more cold weather. But chances of us getting more really cold weather where it's going to get down to the point where it's going to damage your plants is getting more remote by the day right now. So you're safe to prune it off now. Normally during the winter, leave it on until early to mid-March. Stephen also says, my frost damaged trunk had a bunch of mealworm looking things growing inside of it. Do you know what those might have been? They could be anything from beetle grubs to fly larvae, because if that trunk froze and died and is now dead, banana trunks, the reason why they call it a pseudostem is because it is a very, it's the same as, because bananas are a grass. They're in the grass family. So that's a really big, huge, fat grass stem filled with water. So if it freezes and is killed and destroyed, it starts to rot pretty quickly. And that could be attractive to beetle grubs, fly larvae, a lot of different things. So if it was damaged to the point where that happened, you can remove it and start to clean it up now, and then wait and keep your fingers very tightly crossed and hope that more banana shoots are going to come up from the rhizome. So right now you need to be patient. And even if it looks like I think I've completely lost my bananas, you can wait 1 or 2 months at least to see if more things come up, because it may be lost, but not completely lost. If the rhizome is still alive, it can and will send up new suckers. I've seen that happen well into spring, and it's like, okay, it wasn't a total loss. I'm going to get a sucker, and it's going to grow back. I'm going to take good care of it. It's going to grow this summer, and try to add more cold protection next year so that that doesn't happen again. It doesn't get that much damage. So says, hi, my question is about transplanting. I have a large 12-foot banana that is fruiting now. Is it safe to transplant to a different spot? Will I lose the fruit? If it was me, I would fruit on it. I would leave it until that fruit is finished up, done, harvested, and keep in mind at that point, that pseudostem is done. It needs to be chopped down. After that, I would dig up the rhizome, everything that's growing underground, and move it, because it can and should and probably will send up more shoots. So if there's any way that you can keep it right where it is, if you dig it up and transplant it, it's going to have transplant shock. There's a real good, even if you have a couple of good friends come over and help you hold it, move it, just the physical jiggling it around, you may lose the fruit off of it. So very, very tricky thing to do right now. Paul also asked, my questions about, oh, that's the transplanting again. Can you talk a little bit about banana patch management? After a plant fruits, should it be cut down to make room for new suckers? Should all suckers be cut for transplant if it's growing with a plant that has not yet fruited? Like I said, if you plant a couple of bananas, and then if you go out and you purchase some from other varieties, whether it's online or from a lawn and garden center or whatever it might be, you can make an actual banana patch. And you're going to end up over time having big banana plants, smaller, medium size, and then little suckers just coming up. The little suckers, when they're just coming up, you want to let them come up and get a couple leaves to them, And then what a lot of people do is remove them from the mother plant. So you take a shovel, sharpen it. If you have a bench grinder or just a file, you want to get a nice sharp edge on your curved shovel, position it and push it in, and that's going to slice the new shoot off, the new sucker off of the mother plant. Go in with the trowel, very carefully dig up that little sucker that ideally has a number of healthy roots on it, plant it separately, and now that is your next banana plant for growing. You do need to do that and try to keep some space between the bananas, because if you end up with too many plants growing too closely together, that's what happens in nature, but it's going to take long. Your plants are going to grow slower because they're competing with each other. It's going to take longer to actually get that banana crop off of each pseudo stem. So it's going to be, if things get going really well, it's a process of slicing off, digging up plants as they come up as suckers, moving them to a new spot or expanding the circle or starting another circle, whatever it might be. And you're always adding ideally more and more plants to it. But you do need to lose some room between the plants. Yeah, so your question about should all suckers be cut for transplant if it's growing plant that has not yet fruited? Generally, yes. And you want to do that when they're still small. What a lot of people do is after they cut that sucker off, they'll remove most or all the leaves off that sucker, plant it, make sure it's in a good spot, lots of compost, fertilize it really, really lightly at first, lots and lots of water, and get that little sucker up and growing and happy and going, and then care for it the same way that you will take care of the plants that you're going to be picking up, because they're fairly small plants also. So I think that kind of answered Brianne's question about do we have to do anything special to cut off and replant the suckers. It's normally done with a sharp shovel, because if you sharpen a shovel, it's like a big knife that you can push into the ground. Nancy has a banana plant started in a large pot. Is now a good time to transplant to the ground? I'd wait a few more weeks until it feels like, oh my gosh, I think summer is here. Right then is a very, very good time to do that. So you need to do it at the beginning of summer so you catch all that nice warm daytime and nighttime weather, but not too early, because another cool or chilly night is going to make it unhappy. So I'd wait a few more weeks. And everybody who's picking up plants, I'm going to tell each and every one of you when I see you in person, wait probably a few weeks to go ahead and put them in the ground. We're almost there, but we may not quite be there at this point. Let me go ahead and put my email in the chat here. So there's my email in the chat box. For anybody, just shoot me an email and I'll go ahead and make a PDF of the PowerPoint and send it right to you. And Lydia asked, at what distance should I plant these banana plants apart? It needs to be at least a few feet apart. Further is better, but I know a lot of people in a residential landscape don't have a limited amount of space. So if you were in down in Homestead, down in the southern tip of Florida, and you wanted to retire and start a banana farm, you're going to space them further apart. You're going to build them in, because it's very, very wet down there. You want them to drown. You're going to do it differently commercially than what most people do in their own backyard. I would try to get ideally 3 feet between each plant. That should be enough room for it to grow well without cramping it and causing too much competition. If you find that you do really well with bananas and you go out there and give them love and attention and play music and spend time with them, they're doing great, start multiple patches in your yard. Bananas are a beautiful ornamental plant. It really does capture that tropical look if you're looking for that in your landscape. That's what I've always liked to have my landscape. I hate formal landscaping with the foot hedges that are just boxed and trimmed. The English tea garden look, that's not me. I like tropical, I like bananas, I like palms, I like heliconias, gingers, smaller things of flower, tropical looking things. Lemongrass looks very tropical also. So don't be afraid if your bananas do well to start multiple spots to give each one even more room to grow and spread and produce. But I would think 3 feet between each individual plant should be enough. And the plants that you are going to get, let me go back here to the PowerPoint. It says that they will grow 6 to 8 feet tall. So that is good size for a banana. If you look at other varieties, some of them get bigger than that. Some of them get quite a bit bigger. They do have dwarf varieties that will only get 4 or 5 feet tall before they flower and get fruit. So if you're looking at different areas in your yard, you can match the variety you plant with how big you want it to match the amount of space you have. So that's where planting comes in. You don't want to plant a full-size variety like this right next to a bedroom window or in a very, very small, tight spot. It's going to kind of outgrow the room that you put it in. Because they will grow. They will get a whole lot bigger than they are right now. Kimberly says, how big are the plants we will be getting? Grand total, 6 inches tall, something like that. They look really good. They look really healthy. They're not particularly growing at the moment. They're going to need some, sunshine, regular water, and definitely warm temperatures to get them kicking and growing. Blanca says that she has avocado trees, which is great. Avocado trees are definitely a very important part of a tropical productive landscape. Shelly says, what are some types of different bananas we can grow? I've heard of some that taste like ice cream and others like cinnamon. There's a variety called Blue Java. It's also called ice cream banana. And the bananas are actually kind of a bluish green. When they first form on the plants, they ripen to a yellow. Some people say it tastes a little bit like ice cream. I'm not sure if I've ever tried one before. Another common one is apple bananas or little miniature bananas. They never get really big, and you can find them at grocery stores now. At most grocery stores, they're the little miniature bananas, and you can actually find little miniature red bananas. They're really sweet. They're very, very good for banana bread, and it's considered a dessert banana. So that's another good option. I've never heard of one that tastes like cinnamon, but if you look online, you can find a lot of different nurseries, a lot of which are down in South Florida, and they're more than happy to ship you banana plants. They're small, like the ones you're going to be getting when they ship them, so they're not going to ship you a 6-foot tall banana. I don't know, maybe if you really want one, you're willing to pay for the shipping, they'll do it. But there's a lot of different varieties and options online. So I start looking online, looking at different South Florida nurseries for information on specific varieties. We're getting requests for an avocado class. Thank you. I run out of ideas eventually about what crops to cover. We'll put avocados on the list. I don't know if little avocado trees are available, but I'll look into that. If nothing else, we'll have a class about growing avocados. And hearing about everybody who has avocado trees, and Blanca has a lemon tree, but it hasn't grown much. I also have tomato plants, bell peppers, and cilantro, backyard muscadines class. I can get muscadine plants, so we'll put muscadines on the list. If you want to grow grapes, muscadines grow great here, but it's about the only one that's going to grow well here. So Hannah, thank you so much. Glad that you're happy to hear about the muscadines. We'll go ahead and put them up almost next. So let me go ahead and wrap up here very quickly, and I'll go ahead and leave this on the recording so people who could not join us live but are watching this recording and have paid for the class and will be picking up banana plants, I will be at our Master Gardener nursery this coming Saturday, but only from 8 in the morning till about 10 in the morning. It is supposed to rain on Saturday, and I don't know when, and I don't know how much. The nursery may be open, they may not be open. They won't make that decision until tomorrow. I will still be there from 8 in the morning till 10, because even if I have to sit in the rain, I could do that for 2 hours. So if you want to pick them up in person on Saturday, go to the nursery. I'll be there first thing in the morning from 8 to 10. If you don't want to go to the nursery or you can't on Saturday, you can come by our office and pick up your plants. You can hop in your car in just a few minutes when I wrap up here, drive to the office. They have plants there right now. They have a list of everybody so they can go ahead and mark you off the list. So feel free to pick them up at our office. We are there Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. There's somebody there and you can pick them up from there. So if you have any other questions, problems, issues, please feel free to shoot me an email, wlester@ufl.edu, and we can make arrangements to hold your plants for you. But you're going to have to pick them up from the office if worse comes to worse, and we're only there generally 8 to 5. So if you have a problem, question, shoot me an email. Otherwise, let me go ahead and shut off the recording. And thank you all so much for joining us. And we will be having more of these classes where you can sign up and register and actually get some starter plans to get you started off in your own yard.